most August Napoleon, Emperor of the French, is crowned and enthroned.
We have been waiting so long for Napoleon to finally hit cinemas, and I know I'm late to the party, but I finally had a chance to watch Napoleon last night, and to say I've been super hyped for this film would be an understatement. I have been anticipating this film's release since early 2022, and I even gave it a mention in this list here on the top 5 upcoming historical films of 2023 that I'm most looking forward to. So was Napoleon worth the wait? Or is it just another film that's gonna get added to the ever-growing list of mediocre historical films that got released over the past couple of years? We will be covering all of that and more in this video and review coming up. But before we begin, don't forget, if you love anything to do with historical movies or historical TV shows, then subscribe to my channel HistorySpark. So I think the best place to start this review is by discussing the plot and the overall story that is being portrayed on the screen within Napoleon. The best description for this film would be it is trying to do too much in too little time. There's just far too much story being forced into a 2-hour 30-minute runtime. And yes, I know there will be a 4-hour extended version of this film that will get released to Apple TV next year, but I feel like even with an extended duration of 4 hours, there's just far too much history here that needs to be covered, and I think to do it justice properly, a trilogy needs to be created. And the movie is very rapid pace. Just to give you a quick outline of all the events that got covered in a 2.5 hour time span. It starts with the French Revolution, then we move on to the Reign of Terror, followed by Napoleon's coup at Austerlitz, then his first defeat, followed by his exile to Elba, then his return to France and becoming emperor a second time, the climactic Battle of Waterloo, and his second exile, and then finally his death. All of this in a 2.5 hour period, and I'm sure there's plenty of other things I forgot to mention in that list. But it's just far too much story and too little time, and I think Ridley Scott has really done a disservice to all fans of history. And one of the reasons I feel like this is that I feel like the primary purpose of a historical film is to entertain and keep audiences engaged from beginning to end. But even with my above basic understanding of Napoleon's history, I found this film to be just so confusing and all over the place. There were so many times I had to poke my friend who was with me at the cinema and go, who is he talking to? Is that his brother? A French politician? A general? An Englishman? A goat disguised as a human? I just don't know, because there are just so many characters being introduced and removed within the film that it is pretty much impossible to keep track of them, as they get no introduction or any kind of backstory whatsoever. And on top of this never-ending revolving door of secondary characters being introduced and removed within the film, we also have time jumps within the film that are incoherent and pretty much impossible to keep track of. But I know I've been very negative so far, but it isn't all doom and gloom with Napoleon. The movie does have a great start to the film, and it made me very optimistic that this was going to be the epic historical drama we've all been waiting for, as the French Revolution and the execution of Marie Antoinette and the Siege of Toulon were portrayed very well back to the story and the plot of the film. And this film seems to dedicate a huge amount of its runtime, up to I would say 1 hour 30 minutes of its 2 hour 30 minute theatrical release, being dedicated to exploring the romantic relationship between Napoleon and his wife Josephine. And to be fair, most of these scenes were boring, meaningless, and confusing, and I feel like his troubled marriage and his desire to produce an heir should not have been the focus of a Napoleon film. We should have focused more on his military genius and the military tactics that he depicted to win so many battles throughout his career. And to make things even worse, this film has gone out of its ways to emasculate Napoleon, as we see all of his victories and his success in battle are all due to the influence of Josephine in his life. And speaking of an emasculated and eccentric Napoleon, this brings me to a second topic of discussion for this review, and that is the acting within Napoleon. And I have to say, wow, Joaquin Phoenix was an absolute letdown here. He did not in any way or form produce a realistic portrayal of Napoleon to me, and in fact I would say his performance was more reminiscent of his portrayal of the Joker. laughing randomly for no reason or during very serious moments of the film, and making random weird noises like a horse when he would get horny, which just seems so out of character with everything we know about Napoleon, as he was well known for his intelligence, political acumen and charm, and none of this comes across in Joaquin Phoenix's performance. But Vanessa Kirkby though does a much better job portraying Josephine Bonaparte. Although her performance is not stellar by any stretch of the imagination, she is still able to bring her A game when it is needed. Now I know this review may sound overly negative and I'm making it sound like Napoleon must be one of the worst historical movies ever created, but that is far from the case. I'm just disappointed that a movie about such a legendary historical figure and with such an A-list cast and a producer like Ridley Scott could create a film that is this bad. So after taking all of this into consideration, how would I rate Napoleon, and do I think it is worth watching this film in cinemas? So I'd have to say that the positives of Napoleon are that the film does great battle scenes, has stunning cinematography, an excellent soundtrack, as well as some great set pieces and costume design. But the negatives of this film cannot be overstated. There's a horribly rushed pace to the film, the plot is incoherent, and the terrible acting by Joaquin Phoenix makes this a film that I cannot recommend that people should go watch in cinemas right now. I would say you'd be better off waiting for the 4-hour version of this film to get released to Apple TV and see if that is a better experience for you. Personally, I feel like that this was a misstep, and there is no that the story of Napoleon can be told effectively in just a singular film. This should have been a trilogy movie focusing on the many battles that he had participated in within his career, rather than being a film and his troubles with his wife Josephine. So taking all of this into consideration, I would say that Napoleon is a 5 out of 10 for me, as it does get all the critical points of a film wrong. Even though there are some good aspects to the film, I didn't enjoy it as nearly as much as I would have liked to. So let me know in the comments down below if you agree with my review, and remember to stay up to date with everything to do with historical movies and historical TV shows. Subscribe to my channel HistorySpark, and thank you so much for watching.